And we are recording. What we're saying, people. Hope you're keeping well. This is HJM Boxing, of course. Back again, another video. Of course, we're breaking down the fight on the weekend, reviewing that fight, which was a hell of a fight. One of the best fights I've seen this year, if not the best fight this year, where Josh Taylor from the United Kingdom, Scotland, was victorious, winning via unanimous decision, 114, 112 on all three of the scorecards by the judges. So the knockdowns proving crucial in the 6th and 7th round, where he defeated Jose Ramirez. First of all, this fight was absolutely brilliant. I thought this was the best fight I've seen this year. I say it's one of the best fights this year. It probably was the best fight I've seen this year. Both guys, brilliant, had their moments from start to finish, showed heart, both of them in certain positions where they were struggling, certain points they were in difficult situations. Josh Taylor early on in the fight, I worried for him quite a lot in this fight. The 3rd, 4th rounds in particular, I thought they were strong Jose Ramirez rounds where he was hitting him to the body superbly. Very strong to the body, Jose Ramirez, great body puncher, very strong. And his come forward pressure was taking its toll on Josh Taylor early on. He actually hurt Josh Taylor numerous times in those rounds. Clear Ramirez rounds and very strong Ramirez rounds as well. Josh Taylor, I thought, started the fight okay. It took him a little while to get started. I think with Jose Ramirez's pressure, I had the first 2. I thought Josh Taylor just about done enough in the first 2. Then, of course, I had Jose Ramirez winning the next 2 after that. And it was quite an even fight going into the 5th, 6th rounds. And then, a very competitive fight early on. I thought Jose Ramirez was looking the better and actually was gaining momentum in the fight and getting the early momentum. Very quick start from Jose Ramirez, which in the past, he's been questionable with his starts in fights, Zaypida, fights like that against Victor Postol. He started slowly, but in this fight, give the guy his dues. He turned up early, brought that pressure, came forward, letting combinations go. Very quick combination puncher, Jose Ramirez, and he was looking very strong early on in that fight. Let's have it right. He was looking very, very strong. And Josh Taylor had to make adjustments in the fight. He had to, at times, mix with him. Like I said in my preview, he'd have to mix with him at times, but also box clever on the back foot, out of range, using his jab to perfection, the 1-2s, which, to be fair, in them early rounds still, Josh Taylor landed some good shots as well. Don't get it wrong. I'm not saying he didn't land good shots. I had him winning a couple of rounds in the first 4, 5, 6 rounds, but I thought Jose Ramirez started the early on, like the first 4 rounds, I thought Jose Ramirez was the guy looking in command and looking like the guy who's going on to possibly win the fight, maybe even stop Josh Taylor at points, I thought he was really hurting Josh Taylor and, getting success in the fight early on and looking like he was going to build on it. 5th and 6th came for the 5th round. I thought it was a close round again. I thought Josh Taylor did enough to win that round, but I thought the whole swing of the fight turned in that 6th round, of course. Josh Taylor landing a beautiful check hook, landing a hook even, a beautiful shot, well-timed shot, which, Ramirez dropped, didn't he? He took a drop, he took a count. He came back, and to be fair to Jose Ramirez, he got dropped, of course, 10-8 round, but he actually came back in the round, he came back, he showed a lot in that round, actually, and probably was the better out of the 2 after the knockdown in that round. But of course, with the knockdown, crucial in these kind of title championship fights, especially undisputed fights, the little margins like knockdowns and things like this, even if it's a flash knockdown, they're crucial. And a 10-8 round for Josh Taylor there completely swung the momentum of the fight. Jose Ramirez, like I say, bounced back in the round, but it was a 10-8 round and a clear Josh Taylor round. So it was a big, big plus for Josh Taylor. And then, of course, in the next round, Josh Taylor, even better. He dominated that round 7, absolutely dominated it and landed probably the best hook, best uppercut you've seen in a long time, Really good uppercut on the money, on the point, right on the chin, right on the button where you want to land the shot. And Jose Ramirez was hurt after that. You can see visibly, it was a bit of a flash knockdown, don't get me wrong. He got up and recovered well, but it was a pinpoint shot. It was the best shot of the whole fight. One of the best shots I've seen this year, actually, by a fight. Of course, Canelo with his uppercut against Saunders was brilliant, but this was another brilliant shot from Josh Taylor against Jose Ramirez. After that, I thought that was where Josh Taylor really gained momentum in the fight. Second half of the fight, Josh Taylor really took over this fight and looked spectacular, looked world-class, looked elite. And I've been saying for time, this guy is a pound-for-pound fighter. I think he's the best fighter in Britain. And he proved it in the second half of the fight, really took over and shone for me. Like, I thought he won the fight after that, you know, the knockdowns 7, 8, 9, and just, I think, won all those rounds and really took clear authority in the fight, and was cruising, to be honest with you. And I thought he took the last 3 rounds off in the fight. I thought Jose Ramirez came back a bit in the fight near the end. Jose Ramirez, again, letting his combinations go and showing tremendous heart, like I say, from getting dropped heavy in 2 rounds to come back and get on top really at the end of the fight, and how he started the fight really come through in the end. You know, he really showed a lot of that combination punching, a lot of that heart, a lot of grit, come forward aggression, which is difficult at times. Like I said, Josh Taylor had to absorb that, you know, and show a lot of heart himself as well, a lot of grit. And of course, like I said before, Josh Taylor has a hell of a chin. So the shots Ramirez was landing, they were hurting him, but he was taking them very well, because I think he's got a hell of a chin, Josh Taylor, and he took them well. And at points, maybe Josh Taylor could have actually looked for the stoppage. You know, I think he definitely eased off at the end, but he had the lead on points, you know. I thought he was winning clear anyway. I know the judges, different matter. It was actually a close fight in the end. If you look at the scorecards, the knockdowns actually proved to be the difference in the fight for Josh Taylor actually winning the fight. But for me, I had Josh Taylor winning the fight 7-5 with the knockdowns, 114, 111. So he did enough for me to cruise at the end. He gave himself such a lead for me on my scorecard to just cruise those last rounds. I know some people are quite critical of that, but I thought he had the fight won. He done his work. He done all his work and done the business really from round 6 to 9. I thought he won the fight there and then, really. He turned it from a close fight to a convincing fight. When you drop your opponent twice in a fight, especially of that magnitude, you know, I think it's very difficult for his opponent in Jose Ramirez to come back. He came back in the sense that he went to the final bell. Credit to him. He's a Mexican. He's tough as nails. Got a hell of a chin. Obviously, he's got dropped twice, but he shows tremendous heart and grit to keep going. And he actually came back in the fights as well. When he actually got dropped, he actually got better in the fight. So, give Jose Ramirez his credit. He came back strong. And especially when you're getting dropped twice heavy, coming back like that and actually coming back strong shows what a fighter he is. And to be fair, I was a little bit dismissing him a little bit before the fight, saying I'm not sure where the credit was due for him. But, he turned up. He's a great fighter, Jose Ramirez. He'll come again at 140 or 147. He'll be a cracking fight for anyone, and there's a lot of fights that can be made for him. He can definitely come back, and he's proved a unified champion at 140. I think the next move, of course, like I say, for a lot of these guys, in that 140 mix is probably to move up to 147. Jose Ramirez, Josh Taylor, of course, Regis Prograis, of course, a guy who, for me, gave Josh Taylor his hardest fight. Very good fighter, Regis Prograis. And I wouldn't mind seeing that rematch with Josh Taylor, but we wait and see what happens with him. So, yeah. Josh Taylor, though, going back to the fight, going a little bit off topic there. Josh Taylor, he done the business there. He got the job done on points. I thought maybe he could have pushed for a stoppage, but he done the business on points. So you've got to give the guy his full credit. He's got to give Josh Taylor his dues now. And for me, like I said earlier, I think he's the best British fighter in the world now. I think you've got to give him that credit and got to say he's pound for pound best British fighter. And for me, he's top 10, at least pound for pound in the world. At least when you become undisputed, you're in a very limited group, a very star-studded group. He's joining Usyk, he's joining Terence Crawford, joining all those fighters. Bernard Hopkins, Lennox Lewis, who of course had 3 of the belts at the time with the recognised belts. He was undisputed. So you're with very star-studded names in boxing, historic names in boxing to win all the belts. So he's the first recognised British fighter to win all 4 belts as well. So. The guy needs his credit for me. He needs his credit now. Obviously, he doesn't seem to generate maybe the casual audience, but the guy needs to get his credit, and need these fans to really start backing him and start. Obviously, in Scotland is massive, but in terms of the general of the UK, these casual fans, they need to really start getting behind him. These sports channels, BT Sport, Sky Sports didn't show the fight, which is pathetic, really. They need to get really behind them. Shout out to Fight TV. They put on a good service. That was £9, 10, paid for it. Great service. Had to pay for that fight. What a fight. And these sort of fights are why I love watching boxing, best for the best. Fair play to Top Rank again, delivering. Bob Arum, fair play to him. I'm not his biggest fan, but he's delivering good fights. Last year, Teofimo Lopez, Lomachenko, that was again another undisputed fight. And you got obviously this fight, another undisputed fight, 140. Just cracking fight to see. This was a real fight for boxing fans, for proper hardcore boxing fans. This was the fight we were all looking forward to. and it certainly delivered. And for me, it was a fight of the year contender. I knew it would be on paper. I think everyone said it would be, and it definitely delivered for me because it had a bit of everything, you know. I think it ended up being a one-sided fight, but it wasn't a one-sided fight, actually. There was moments in the fight, of course, on the scorecard, it may have looked one-sided because of the knockdowns, but there were still moments where Jose Ramirez looked really on top, and like Josh Taylor was in trouble in that fight in points. He had to dig in and show that grit, you know. And Josh Taylor's a warrior, he's a fighter, and he showed that grit and really performed out of his skin. Again, he performed out of his skin, you know. Seems like Josh Taylor, man, in all these moments, you know, all these fights, you know, where he's got adversity, he's struggling with adversity, you know, Regis Prograis, where his eye, I couldn't see him on like 2 or 3 rounds, could he? Against Regis Prograis in last rounds at the O2 Arena a year ago or 2 ago, whatever, yeah. Showed a lot of heart in that fight, showed a lot of fight early on in his career, you know, Victor Postol, that was a tough fight for him, showed a lot of heart and grit. In all these moments where you need to show grit, you need to show heart, and key moments of fights, Josh Taylor delivers. And that just shows what a world-class fighter is, an elite fighter he is, not world-class, elite, you know. In the big moments, you have to deliver as an elite fighter, and Josh Taylor has done that in every fight. You know, he's had close fights. A lot of people in certain fights haven't had him winning, drawing, whatever. I've had him winning personally in every fight, close fights. He's had some close fights, but I've had him winning. And now 18 fights in, he's become undisputed champion. That's legacy. That's a historic thing in boxing to achieve. Of course, like I say, Alexander Usyk similar, and he's in that ilk of fighters. Alexander Usyk, T-Bud Crawford, Terence Crawford, Teofimo, for me, Teofimo Lopez, I recognise him as undisputed. Fighters like this, you know, it's incredible achievements. And Josh Taylor, as a Brit, you know, British fight fans and British general public need to get behind this guy because he's a star. He is a star in the making. He's already created history. And for me, he's defined himself as one of the greatest British fighters. Whatever he does in his career, for me now, he is one of the greatest British fighters for me. With Hatton, with Nassim Hamed, obviously, with Joe Calzaghe, Lennox Lewis, like I say. I have Tyson Fury in that kind of mix as well, Carl Froch. With all these sort of names now, Josh Taylor is in that mix, you know. Ken Buchanan, Jim Watt, of course, in Scotland. Ricky Burns being a 2-3 weight world champion, hasn't he? He's with these guys now. For me, being undisputed in your weight class means you're number one in your weight class. It doesn't happen a lot in boxing. So Josh Taylor is a legend now in boxing, and he can keep going. Though he's not obviously going to retire on that. He's going to keep going, and there's some massive fights for him now. It really is some historic fights for Josh Taylor. He can go in, and like I say, the UK needs to get behind him because at 147, you know, it's going to be exciting now to see him what he does. He could have a rematch with Regis Prograis. He could come back and defend those belts against Jack Catterall. I know they mentioned that Edinburgh Castle. That would be a brilliant fight for a homecoming fight for Josh Taylor in front of his fans in Edinburgh. I think that's the next thing for him to do. You know, he's fought now in Vegas. He's fought obviously at the Hydro in Glasgow, won his world title there, done big things, fought in an O2 pay-per-view card against Regis Prograis. He's done it all technically as a fighter now and fighting in America, the American dream, Vegas. That's where every fighter wants to fight. So he's got a lot, you know, he's got Top Rank behind him as well, Bob Arum. So there's fights for him to be made. And I think with Bob Arum, actually, to be fair, there's fights for him. There's Teofimo Lopez. Obviously, he's got to defend his belts against George Kambosos Jr. But I suspect that's a tough fight in itself, but I suspect he gets through that. That's a potential fight at 140 against another undisputed guy at 135. That'd be a massive fight. There's obviously the Catterall fight. There's the Regis Prograis rematch, but obviously with politics, he'd want to keep all his belts. I don't see that being the next fight, but potentially down the road, you could have that at 140, 147. Of course, Jose Ramirez down the road. That's another brilliant fight that can be made. I think that'll be made at 147. And I think the move for me, though, is fight Terence Crawford at 147 for the WBO welterweight title. Makes sense, makes perfect sense for me. Makes absolute sense for me. That fight, Terence Crawford's looking for dance partners. He's not getting the fights, is he, at 147? Brilliant fighter, T-Bud, love the guy. I think he's an incredible fighter, Terence Crawford. Love his style, southpaw, slick southpaw, one of the best guys to watch in boxing, on the eye, to watch, a brilliant boxer, brilliant switch hitter. But at 147, there's no way of not creaming it, you know. He hasn't fought the guys at 147. Terence Crawford, he's not fought the elite guys at 147. The politics, obviously, being with Top Rank, BBC, all the fighters, you know, your Sean Porters, your Danny Garcias, Keith Thurmans, Errol Spence, they just haven't delivered. They haven't delivered those fights, or hasn't been able to get around the politics, and he really needs to do so. He needs a big fight at 147. You know, he's fought Kell Brook, He's fought Amir Khans. These are all washed names in boxing. No offense. They're guys that were brilliant fighters back in their prime, would have been good fights, but they're past their ceiling. They're past their sell-by date. And, this wasn't, these guys obviously were just names on T-Bud's resume, and he needs a big fight. And for me, Josh Taylor, an undisputed 140 champion, who, in my opinion, has a better resume than Terence Crawford at 140 as well. I think Terence Crawford's best win at 140 was Victor Postol. Josh Taylor, I know obviously different timing than that. Father time, Victor Postol may have not been the same fighter that Terence Crawford fought, but Josh Taylor beat him and beat brilliant other 140 champions in Regis Prograis, Belancic, and of course Jose Ramirez. So I think Josh Taylor has a better resume than Crawford. As mad as that may sound to some people, for me he's got a better resume than Bud Crawford, and for me he's a legit fighter for Bud Crawford now. Obviously, if he moved up in the divisions, of course with his WBO strap, he would be mandatory anyway for Terence Crawford, and I think that fight will be made anyway, because I think they, like I say, they need dance partners for Terence Crawford. And obviously with Manny Pacquiao, Errol Spence being announced, what a fight that is, by the way. I could break that down in a couple of videos time or whatever, but that's a hell of a fight for that in the 147 division, and two big names that of course you'd like to see Crawford be matched with, but that's not happening, is it? So there's no other name really out there for Crawford. Maybe a unification with Ugas, but he's with PBC as well, so that fight's not going to be made. So out of the top ranked stable, the fight to make is Josh Taylor, the Bud Crawford, Josh Taylor for the WBO welterweight belt. Two former undisputed champions at 140, now at 147. Neither are massive 147 fighters either. What a fight that is. And I'll tell you this now, I picked Josh Taylor to beat Terence Crawford. Big shout, but I picked Josh Taylor to beat Terence Crawford. I think he's got the style to beat him. I honestly do. I think Josh Taylor has got the style to beat him. I think he can mix it with both southpaws, of course. I think Josh Taylor has the style to mix it with Bud Crawford and make it his sort of fight. Make it an inside fight for Josh Taylor. Maybe I'm totally out of my mind and Terence Crawford just picks him off. But I think Josh Taylor's an awkward fighter himself. He's very strong, big guy, and I think he'd be a good 147 fight. I think 147 would actually suit him as well. And I think his style, he'd make it a slug fight. He'd make it come to the start of the ring. The inside work of Josh Taylor, brilliant inside fighter. And I think he could get the better of Crawford. Be a very tough style for Terence Crawford. Of course, Terence Crawford will be a favourite, but I've just got an inkling. I think Josh Taylor's a special fighter, coming into his prime as well. I really honestly do believe Josh Taylor can do it. And I think that's a hell of a fight to make. And I think that's an absolutely outstanding fight to be made in the welterweight division. And the winners out of Manny Pacquiao, Errol Spence, Crawford, Josh Taylor, there will be big fights. 147 would be lit. It is lit already, 147 with, of course, your Boots Ennis, your Virgil Ortiz as well coming up. But, if you add Josh Taylor in there, I think Jose Ramirez, you add in these other 140 guys who are elite as well. You add in these guys to the 147 division. You just got some hell of fights to be made, 147, be back to what it was in like 05, 06, 07, Floyd Mayweather, mixing it with all the 147 fighters, obviously Ricky Hatton's them days, Manny Pacquiao obviously later on, but obviously Cotto's, all them names, mixed about, Marcus Maidana, all these names at 147. It'll be a golden era again at the 147 division. So let's hope this all happens. But first and foremost, lastly, actually, all credit to Josh Taylor, my guy. Followed him from the start of his career. Always said this guy is a special fighter, and he is the best British fighter in my opinion. And now he's a top 5 pound for pound fighter, in my opinion. Can't have him at least in your top 10. Undisputed. How can you not have an undisputed fighter in your top 10 pound for pound? And for me, his resume, the guys he's beat aren't chumps either. He's beating legit guys. And he's going to move up now. I think he's got to move up to 147. I wouldn't budge if he goes for that Jack Catterall fight. I wouldn't hold that against him. But that's a good fight, for homecoming fight. An English versus a Scottish fighter, the Scot v the Brit at English at Edinburgh Castle, somewhere like that. 2 MTK fighters, an easy fight to make in-house. I wouldn't begrudge him that, but I want to see the Terence Crawford fight. And let me know below, guys, what fight you want to see for Josh Taylor next, because there's some massive fights out there. He's got a lot of options himself now on what he can actually do. Maybe take his time even at 147, not go straight into a Bud Crawford fight, maybe take a few tune-up fights and go from there, maybe fight like, trying to think of top ranked guy. They've got Mean Machine, haven't they? Kalkalaukis, the Lithuanian, very good welterweight fighter. They've got him. I think they've got Benavides as well, another good Mexican fighter. I think they've got him still on their books, who Bud Crawford fought on his way. So there's some fights at 147 where they could mix with Josh Taylor, potentially give him a few tune-ups before he goes in there with a big name like obviously Bud Crawford. But he's an undisputed champion now, so all there is left for Josh Taylor is to fight the best fighters now. He's solidified himself as a British great for me, a British GOAT even. He really has solidified himself as that. And, if at 140, he's probably one of the best ever to do it at 140. I think it's a good debate to have, one of the best ever super lightweight fighters. And Josh Taylor might be in that mix now for what he's done in terms of being undisputed, because it doesn't happen often, does it, people in boxing? So, full credit to Josh Taylor. Like I say, leave your comments below what you think's next for Josh Taylor and what you thought of the fight, because I thought this was a fight of the year contender. And I'm buzzing for Josh Taylor, good guy. Fair play to Ben Davison as well, proved a lot of people wrong in that fight as well. So, give the credit to Team Taylor, a big win for the UK. And the UK needed that, UK fighting scene needed that win, because obviously we've had a bit of a tough couple of weeks and months, in boxing in this country, in the UK in particular. Fury, AJ obviously is not happening, which is gutting to see. That fight is not happening, of course. Wilder winning his arbitration. So we've got Wilder Fury, we've got Fury Wilder, we've got AJ Usyk. Still good fights, I'll be buzzing to see, but we wanted to see Fury AJ, so we're a bit gutted about that. And of course, Billy Joe Saunders, a great British fighter, losing. Josh Warrington losing as well, another fighter I had in my pound for pound. UK's losing, so been on a bit of a decline. British boxing, but this is definitely deserves the credit and puts UK boxing back again with an elite fighter with Josh Taylor. So I hope Josh Taylor gets the credit, and I hope people start really getting behind him and he gets mainstream support. There's not enough mainstream support being given for him, and I hope he gets it, because he's a hell of a fighter. And full credit to Josh Taylor. Big up Josh Taylor. What a legend. Undisputed champion, baby. Let's go. All right, people, take it easy. God bless.